It was a bitterly cold winter night in London. Olivia Carter's mansion, a symbol of her success as a businesswoman, stood silently against the howling wind outside. The golden light from the chandeliers cast a warm glow over the grand foyer, offering a stark contrast to the icy world beyond. Olivia had just returned from a long day at work, eager to sink into a plush armchair with a book and a glass of wine, when she heard a faint sound coming from the front door. At first, she thought it might be the wind, but something in the back of her mind urged her to listen again. There it was, a soft, almost imperceptible cry, like that of a child. Her heart quickened as she moved swiftly towards the door, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the handle. When she opened the door, the sight before her took her breath away. Lying on the doorstep, wrapped in a coarse, frayed blanket, was a baby. The child's wide, frightened eyes stared up at her, with silent tears tracing down its rosy cheeks, already tinged with the bitter cold. Olivia stood frozen, her mind reeling in shock. How could anyone abandon a baby on a night like this? Without hesitation, she bent down and carefully scooped the baby into her arms. The blanket was damp and cold, and the baby, shivering and fragile, seemed on the brink of succumbing to the harsh winter night. Not wasting another second, Olivia hurriedly brought the child inside, closing the door firmly behind her to shut out the biting wind. Her thoughts raced as she looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the tattered blanket. Who could have left this baby here? And why? There was no note, no clue, nothing that revealed the parent's identity or the reason for the abandonment. As the baby cried softly in her arms, Olivia felt a powerful surge of compassion and protectiveness. Standing in the warmth and safety of her home, with the mansion's lights glowing softly against the dark night, Olivia made a decision that would change her life forever. She would take care of this child. While she gently rocked the baby, trying to soothe its cries, Olivia knew that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. She had no idea of the challenges and dangers that would follow this choice, nor of the shadows from her past that would soon resurface. But at that moment, all that mattered was keeping this tiny, vulnerable life safe. And so, the night that had begun like any other turned into the beginning of something much larger. A journey that would lead Olivia to confront the darkest secrets of her past and discover a strength she never knew she had. Olivia Carter barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she would wake up to the soft sounds of the baby stirring beside her. She had placed the child in a makeshift crib, crafted from cushions and blankets, right next to her bed. The baby, now wrapped in a warm, soft blanket, had eventually fallen asleep, but Olivia's mind refused to rest. Questions swirled in her thoughts. Who were this baby's parents? What desperate circumstances had led them to leave their child at her doorstep? And why her? Olivia had never considered herself a maternal person. Her life was consumed by work, her days filled with meetings, negotiations, and the demands of running a thriving business. But now, as she watched the child sleeping peacefully, she felt an unshakable sense of responsibility. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room. Olivia, exhausted but determined, knew she had to make a decision. She couldn't simply hand the baby over to the authorities without knowing more. There was something about the way the child had been left, so deliberately, so quietly, that hinted at a deeper story. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary case of abandonment. After a quick shower, Olivia dressed in her usual sharp, tailored suit, but today, it felt different. There was a vulnerability in the air, a shift in her carefully controlled life. She carefully picked up the baby, who was now awake and cooing softly, and made her way downstairs to the kitchen. The mansion's cook, Mrs. Harris, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, was already preparing breakfast. She turned, startled to see Olivia holding a baby. "Good heavens, Miss Carter, where did that little one come from?" she asked, her voice a mix of surprise and concern. Olivia explained everything in a few brief sentences, watching as Mrs. Harris's expression shifted from shock to empathy. "Well," Mrs. Harris said, wiping her hands on her apron, "if you're planning to keep the baby, we'll need to get some proper supplies. I can help with that." For the first time since finding the baby, Olivia felt a wave of relief. Mrs. Harris had been with her family for years, and there was comfort in knowing she wouldn't face this new challenge alone. "Thank you, Mrs. Harris. I'll need all the help I can get." The day passed in a blur of phone calls and preparations. Olivia contacted a lawyer, knowing she needed to protect herself and the child legally. She also called the police, though she was careful with her words, not wanting to alert the media or draw unnecessary attention. The police took her statement and promised to investigate, but Olivia could tell they were as puzzled as she was. By afternoon, the mansion had been transformed. Mrs. Harris, efficient as ever, had set up a proper crib in a spare bedroom and stocked up on baby formula, diapers, and clothes. Olivia spent the day juggling calls and emails while keeping one eye on the baby, who seemed to grow more comfortable in its new surroundings. But as evening approached, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Olivia had made the decision to keep the baby, at least for now, but what would that mean for her life? She was a woman used to control, to having every detail of her day planned out, and now she was faced with the unpredictable demands of caring for a child. That night, as she sat in the nursery, watching the baby sleep in the crib, Olivia felt a sense of calm amidst the uncertainty. She knew that this was only the beginning of a new journey, one filled with unknowns. But for the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond her business, beyond her carefully curated life. As she gently stroked the baby's cheek, a soft smile formed on Olivia's lips. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. This child had entered her life for a reason, and whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia Carter found herself slowly adjusting to her new reality. The once quiet mansion was now filled with the sounds of laughter and cries, and Olivia, much to her surprise, found herself thriving in her role as a caretaker. She named the baby Lily, after the flowers that had filled her mother's garden when she was a child. The name felt right, almost as if it had been waiting for this moment. Despite the growing bond between them, Olivia couldn't shake the questions that lingered in the back of her mind. Where had Lily come from? Who were her parents? And why had they chosen Olivia's doorstep as the place to leave their child? The mystery gnawed at her, especially during the quiet moments when Lily was asleep and the house was still. One rainy afternoon, after putting Lily down for a nap, Olivia decided it was time to start finding some answers. She retrieved the blanket that Lily had been wrapped in the night she was found. It was old and worn, but as Olivia inspected it more closely, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small, embroidered symbol in the corner, barely visible against the faded fabric. It was a simple design, a circle with an intricate knot inside. It looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Determined to learn more, Olivia contacted a private investigator named Mark Davenport, a man known for his discretion and skill in uncovering hidden truths. She provided him with the blanket, along with all the details she could remember about that fateful night. Mark arrived at the mansion the next day, his demeanor professional and reassuring. "This symbol," he said, examining the blanket, "it's unusual, but not unfamiliar. It might be tied to a specific family or organization. I'll look into it and see what I can find." As Mark began his investigation, Olivia's thoughts turned inward. She couldn't help but think about her own past, the painful memories she had long tried to bury. Her parents had died when she was young, leaving her in the care of an uncle who was more interested in her inheritance than her well-being. Those years had been difficult, filled with loneliness and a deep sense of abandonment that had only started to heal when she built her own life and career. The parallels between her own childhood and Lily's situation were impossible to ignore. Olivia knew what it was like to feel lost and alone, and she was determined to prevent Lily from experiencing that same pain. But as much as she wanted to protect Lily, she couldn't shake the feeling that this mystery was about to pull her back into the darkest parts of her own past. A few days later, Mark called. "Olivia, I found something. The symbol on the blanket belongs to the Sterling family. They're an old, wealthy family with deep roots in London. But here's the thing. The Sterlings have been involved in a long-standing feud with another family, the Ashfords, for decades. It's a rivalry that has caused a lot of damage on both sides, including several tragic incidents." The name Sterling sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She had heard it before. Her parents had spoken of the Sterlings, but always in hushed tones, as if even mentioning their name could bring trouble. But the Ashfords, that name hit closer to home. It was her mother's maiden name. Mark, are you saying that Lily might be connected to these families? Olivia asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. It's possible, Mark replied. Given the history between the Sterlings and the Ashfords, there could be more to this than we initially thought. I'm digging deeper into the records, but this could be just the beginning of a much larger story. Olivia's mind raced. If Lily was somehow connected to the Ashfords and Sterlings, it meant that the child in her care was tied to a history filled with bitterness, betrayal, and bloodshed. The realization that Lily might be the heir to a feud that had shaped her own life was overwhelming. The past she had tried so hard to escape was now staring her in the face, demanding to be acknowledged. As she hung up the phone, Olivia felt a wave of fear wash over her. What if taking in Lily had put them both in danger? If the Sterlings or Ashfords discovered the truth, what lengths would they go to in order to protect their secrets? That night, as Olivia sat by Lily's crib, watching the baby sleep, she made a silent vow. Whatever the cost, she would uncover the truth about Lily's past. But more importantly, she would do whatever it took to keep Lily safe, even if it meant facing the ghosts of her own history. The days that followed were a blur of tension and anxiety for Olivia Carter. As Mark Davenport continued his investigation, Olivia couldn't escape the feeling that she was being watched. Every creak in the mansion, every shadow that passed by the windows, set her on edge. She had faced countless challenges in her career, but nothing had prepared her for this. A battle against an unseen enemy, with the life of a child hanging in the balance. It was a gray, overcast morning when Mark called with the news that would shatter the fragile calm Olivia had been clinging to. Olivia, I found something significant. Mark's voice was steady, but Olivia could sense the weight of his words. We need to meet in person. This isn't something I can discuss over the phone. An hour later, Mark arrived at the mansion, his expression grave. He carried a thick folder under his arm, which he placed on the coffee table as they sat in the drawing room. Olivia could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for him to speak. Olivia, the deeper I dug into the history of the Sterling and Ashford families, the more complex this story became, Mark began, flipping open the folder. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, and legal documents, each one a piece of a puzzle that Olivia was terrified to complete. What I found connects both families to you in ways I didn't anticipate. He pulled out a photograph of a young woman with striking features and dark hair, a face that was hauntingly familiar. This is Eleanor Ashford, your mother, Mark said quietly. Before she married your father, she was engaged to Robert Sterling, the eldest son of the Sterling family. Olivia felt the room spin. Her mother had never spoken of any engagement, let alone to a Sterling. How is that possible? She never mentioned him. Not once. Mark nodded. That's because the engagement ended in tragedy. Your mother called it off after discovering that Robert had been unfaithful. The Sterling family didn't take it well. They blamed Eleanor for disgracing their family name, and the feud between the Ashfords and Sterlings intensified. It was around this time that your parents decided to move away, hoping to leave the past behind. Olivia's mind raced as she tried to process this revelation. Her mother, so poised and composed, had carried this secret with her all these years. But why had she never told Olivia? And how did it connect to Lily? Mark seemed to read her thoughts. He pulled out another photograph, this one more recent, showing a man with silver hair and piercing eyes. This is William Sterling, Robert's younger brother. After Robert's death in a car accident, William became the head of the Sterling family. He's been at the center of the family's business and personal dealings for years. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She had seen that face before, in passing, at charity events and high society gatherings. William Sterling was known for his ruthless business acumen and his ability to destroy anyone who stood in his way. What does he have to do with Lily? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark's expression darkened. I believe Lily is William Sterling's granddaughter. His daughter, Amelia, had a child out of wedlock, something that would have been scandalous for a family like the Sterlings. I suspect that William arranged for the child to be hidden away to avoid any public disgrace. But for some reason, that plan changed, and the baby ended up on your doorstep. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. So, you're saying that Lily is caught in the middle of this decades-old feud? That William Sterling might want her back, or worse, see her as a threat? Mark nodded solemnly. It's a very real possibility, Olivia. The Sterling family doesn't take kindly to loose ends, and if they find out you have Lily, they could come after both of you. You need to be prepared for what's to come. The gravity of the situation hit Olivia like a tidal wave. She had thought she was saving an innocent child, but now it was clear that Lily was at the heart of a dangerous power struggle. The realization that William Sterling, a man with a reputation for mercilessness, could be searching for Lily made her blood run cold. But as fear threatened to paralyze her, a fierce determination took hold. Olivia had promised herself she would protect Lily, no matter what. She wasn't about to let the shadows of the past destroy the future she was trying to build for this child. I need to know everything about the Sterlings, Olivia said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Every connection, every possible threat. I need to be ready. Mark nodded. I'll dig deeper, find out who we're really dealing with. But Olivia, you need to be careful. The Sterlings are powerful, and they won't hesitate to act if they feel threatened. As Mark left, Olivia stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling gardens that had once brought her peace. Now, they felt like a fragile barrier between her and the dangers that lurked beyond. She knew that the time for hiding was over. The truth was out, and it was only a matter of time before the Sterlings made their move. That night, as she sat by Lily's crib, watching the baby sleep, Olivia made a silent vow. She would uncover the full truth about Lily's past, protect her from the shadows that threatened to engulf them both, and ensure that the cycle of hatred and rivalry that had consumed their families for generations would end with her. Whatever it took, she would keep Lily safe, even if it meant confronting the darkest secrets of her own family. Olivia Carter spent the next few days in a state of restless anticipation. The knowledge that Lily was connected to the Sterling family, and by extension to the Ashford family's bitter past, weighed heavily on her. The mansion, once a sanctuary of quiet luxury, now felt like a fortress under siege, with Olivia constantly on alert for any sign that the Sterlings were closing in. Her mind often drifted back to her mother, Eleanor Ashford. The revelations about Eleanor's broken engagement to Robert Sterling had stirred memories Olivia thought she had long buried. She recalled the fleeting moments when her mother had seemed lost in thought, a sadness in her eyes that Olivia, as a child, had never understood. Now, she wondered if those moments had been tied to the pain of a love that ended in betrayal and the ongoing feud that had shaped their lives. Driven by a need to understand the full scope of the rivalry between the Ashfords and the Sterlings, Olivia spent hours going through old family documents and letters, searching for any clues that might shed light on the past. What she found was a story marked by a series of tragedies and losses, each event deepening the rift between the two families. The Ashfords had been a prominent family in London for generations, known for their philanthropy and social standing. But their fortunes had started to decline in the years before Olivia's birth, largely due to the intense rivalry with the Sterlings. The two families had been business competitors, but their enmity went far beyond the boardroom. There were whispers of sabotage, blackmail, and even violence. The more Olivia read, the more she realized how deep the wounds between the families ran. One letter, in particular, caught her attention. It was from her mother to her father, written shortly after their marriage. The handwriting was elegant, but the words were laced with fear. I've done my best to leave the past behind, but the Sterlings won't let go of their hatred. I fear for what they might do if they ever learn of our connection to Robert's death. We must be careful, for our sake and the sake of our future children. Olivia felt a chill as she read the letter. What had her parents been hiding? Robert Sterling's death had been ruled an accident, but this letter hinted at something more sinister. Had Eleanor and her husband played a role in Robert's demise? And if so, had this secret been the catalyst for the deepening feud between the two families? As Olivia delved deeper into the family history, she began to see a pattern, a cycle of revenge and retribution that had claimed lives on both sides. The Ashfords had suffered financial ruin, while the Sterlings, despite their wealth, had been plagued by scandal and loss. Every generation seemed to bear the weight of the sins of the past, and now it appeared that Lily was the latest victim of this destructive legacy. One evening, as Olivia sat in the library, surrounded by the remnants of her family's past, she received a call from Mark Davenport. His voice was tense, and Olivia immediately knew that something was wrong. "Olivia, I've uncovered more about the Sterlings," Mark began. "It's worse than we thought. William Sterling didn't just want to hide Lily. He wanted to use her as leverage. There's evidence that he was planning to use the child to force a truce with another powerful family, one that could secure his business interests. But when things didn't go as planned, he decided to have the baby disappear quietly." Olivia's heart pounded as she processed Mark's words. "Disappear quietly? You mean he intended to harm Lily?" "There are no clear records, but the implication is there," Mark replied grimly. "William Sterling has a history of removing obstacles by any means necessary. If he finds out that you have Lily, he won't stop until he gets her back, or worse." Olivia felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had ever experienced. The thought of William Sterling treating Lily as a mere pawn in his ruthless games filled her with a fierce determination. She would not let this man, or anyone else, harm the child she had grown to love as her own. "Mark, we need to act fast," Olivia said, her voice steely with resolve. "We need to find a way to protect Lily, legally and physically. Whatever it takes, I won't let the Sterlings get to her." Mark agreed, and they began to formulate a plan. Legal protection would be the first step. Establishing Olivia as Lily's guardian through the courts would make it harder for the Sterlings to claim the child. But Olivia knew that legal measures might not be enough. She needed to prepare for the possibility that William Sterling would bypass the law entirely to get what he wanted. The next day, Olivia met with a top attorney, known for handling high-profile cases involving family disputes. She explained the situation, laying out the risks and the urgency of the matter. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Moore, listened intently before outlining their strategy. "First, we'll file for temporary guardianship, citing abandonment and the potential danger to the child if she's returned to the Sterlings," Evelyn said. "Given the circumstances, I believe we have a strong case, but we'll need to gather as much evidence as possible to support it. We'll also request a restraining order against William Sterling to prevent any attempts to reclaim the child." As Evelyn detailed the legal steps they would take, Olivia couldn't help but think of the tragedies that had befallen her family because of this rivalry. The more she learned, the more she realized that this was not just about protecting Lily. It was about breaking a cycle of hatred and vengeance that had destroyed lives for generations. But even as she prepared to fight, Olivia knew that she was up against a formidable enemy. William Sterling was not a man to be underestimated, and the full extent of his power was still unknown. If he wanted Lily back, he would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. That night, as Olivia sat in Lily's nursery, watching the baby sleep, she felt the weight of the battle ahead. The walls of the mansion felt like they were closing in, the shadows deepening as the storm outside raged. Olivia knew that the coming days would test her in ways she had never imagined. But she was ready. For Lily's sake, for the sake of her own family's legacy, she would confront the Sterlings head-on. The rivalry that had brought so much tragedy into her life would end with her, no matter the cost. The storm outside the mansion seemed to mirror the turmoil brewing inside Olivia Carter. She had always prided herself on being calm and composed, no matter the circumstances, but as the days passed, she felt her control slipping. Every time the phone rang, every unexpected knock at the door sent a jolt of fear through her. She knew the Sterlings were powerful, but she hadn't fully grasped the extent of their reach until now. It started with small things: a car parked just a bit too long outside the mansion, unfamiliar faces in the neighborhood. Then came the phone calls, brief and menacing, from unknown numbers. Each time she answered, there was silence on the other end, a silence that spoke volumes. Olivia knew it was only a matter of time before these veiled threats escalated into something more dangerous. Mark Davenport continued his investigation, but even he was growing concerned. "Olivia, the Sterlings are tightening their grip," he warned during one of their late-night calls. "William Sterling knows we're digging into his past, and he's not going to sit back and let us unravel his secrets. You need to be extremely cautious. Have you thought about leaving the city for a while? It might be safer for you and Lily." Olivia shook her head, even though Mark couldn't see her. "I can't run, Mark. If I leave, I'm letting them win. I won't live my life in fear, and I won't let Lily grow up in hiding. I need to face this head-on, here, where I can control the situation." Mark sighed, clearly frustrated by her refusal to back down. "At least consider increasing security at the mansion. I know a few people who can help, discreet, experienced in dealing with situations like this." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed. The next day, Mark arranged for a security team to assess the mansion and implement additional precautions. Cameras were installed around the property, and a 24-hour security detail was assigned to guard the house. Olivia knew it was necessary, but the sight of guards patrolling her home made her feel like a prisoner. As the days passed, the tension only grew. William Sterling hadn't made any direct moves, but his presence loomed over everything. Olivia knew he was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then, one evening, the waiting ended. It was a quiet night, the kind that usually lulled Olivia into a false sense of security. She had just put Lily to bed and was sitting in the study, going over the legal documents Evelyn Moore had prepared for the guardianship case. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, and for a brief moment, Olivia allowed herself to believe that everything might turn out all right. But that moment was shattered by the sudden sound of shattering glass. Olivia jumped to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The noise had come from the back of the house. She grabbed her phone and ran towards the source of the sound, dialing Mark's number as she went. "Mark, something's wrong," she said breathlessly. "I heard glass breaking." Before she could finish, the line went dead. Olivia stared at her phone in disbelief, panic rising in her throat. She tried calling again, but there was no signal. The realization hit her like a cold wave. Someone had cut the phone lines. Racing back to the nursery, Olivia's only thought was of Lily. She had to protect her, no matter what. As she reached the hallway leading to the nursery, she froze. A dark figure stood at the end of the corridor, silhouetted against the faint light coming from Lily's room. For a split second, Olivia's blood ran cold. But then the fear turned to anger. This was her home, her life, and she would not let anyone take it from her. Without thinking, she grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from a nearby table and charged down the hallway. "Get out of my house!" she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. The figure turned towards her, and for a moment, Olivia saw the glint of something metallic in their hand, a knife. But before the intruder could react, Olivia swung the candlestick with all her strength. It connected with a sickening thud, and the figure crumpled to the ground. Breathing heavily, Olivia stood over the unconscious form, her heart racing. She had never felt more terrified or more alive. But there was no time to think. She had to get Lily out of there. She rushed into the nursery, scooping the baby up from the crib. Lily stirred, but didn't wake, her small body warm and safe in Olivia's arms. As she turned to leave, Olivia heard the sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the study. There was more than one intruder. Olivia's mind raced. The main entrance was too risky. Whoever was out there would be expecting her to use it. Instead, she headed for the servants' staircase at the back of the house. It was narrow and dark, but it led directly to the garage, where her car was parked. She moved quickly but carefully down the stairs, her heart pounding in her ears. The house was eerily silent, the only sound the creak of the old wooden steps beneath her feet. When she reached the garage, Olivia breathed a small sigh of relief. The car was there, and with it, their chance of escape. She placed Lily gently in the back seat, securing her in the car seat before slipping into the driver's seat. Her hands shook as she started the engine, the noise loud and jarring in the stillness of the night. For a moment, Olivia feared the sound would draw the intruders to her, but there was no time to waste. She floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching as the car shot out of the garage and down the long driveway. The gates at the end of the property were still closed, but Olivia didn't slow down. She hit the remote control to open them, praying they would part in time. The gates opened just enough for her to squeeze the car through, and Olivia sped out onto the road, her heart pounding. She drove aimlessly for several minutes, the adrenaline still surging through her veins. Finally, when she was certain they weren't being followed, Olivia pulled over to the side of a quiet street and tried to calm her racing thoughts. Lily was safe, at least for now. But Olivia knew this was just the beginning. The Sterlings had made their move, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. As she sat in the car, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She had fought off an intruder in her own home, with her own hands. She had protected Lily, but at what cost? How far would she have to go to keep this child safe? Olivia glanced back at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger they had just escaped. The sight of her tiny, innocent face gave Olivia the strength she needed. She wouldn't give up, no matter how dark the threats became. Taking a deep breath, Olivia started the car again and headed towards a place where she knew they would be safe, at least for a little while. But as she drove into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. The real battle was only beginning. The adrenaline that had fueled Olivia Carter through the night slowly began to fade as she drove away from the mansion, leaving behind the shattered remnants of her once peaceful life. With every mile she put between them and the house, her thoughts became clearer, the gravity of what had just happened settling in like a weight on her chest. She hadn't planned on where to go, only knowing that she needed to get as far away from the Sterlings as possible. She couldn't risk staying in the city. William Sterling's reach was too wide, his resources too vast. Instead, she headed toward the countryside, to a small estate that had belonged to her parents, a place they had used as a retreat from the pressures of their social life. It was remote, isolated, and most importantly, it was somewhere the Sterlings wouldn't think to look. As she turned onto the narrow, winding road leading to the estate, Olivia felt a pang of fear. This place, once a sanctuary of childhood memories, now felt like a last refuge in a world closing in on her. She was exhausted, but the thought of sleep was far from her mind. There were too many unanswered questions, too many threats lurking in the shadows. After an hour of driving through the dark, forested roads, the estate finally came into view. A sprawling, old manor surrounded by thick woods. The sight of it brought a fleeting sense of relief, though the house, with its darkened windows and long-abandoned air, seemed more foreboding than welcoming. She parked the car near the entrance and carried Lily inside, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The house was cold and musty, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. Olivia quickly found the old generator in the basement and managed to get it running, filling the house with a dim, flickering light. She settled Lily into a small bedroom upstairs, the one that had been hers as a child. It was strange, being back in this room after so many years, with its faded wallpaper and creaking floors. But there was no time to dwell on memories. She needed to think, to plan her next move. As she sat in the dimly lit living room, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mark Davenport. "Olivia, I heard what happened. Are you safe? We need to talk." She quickly replied, her fingers trembling as she typed. "We're safe for now. At the old estate. What's going on? Why did they attack?" A few minutes later, Mark called, his voice filled with urgency. "Olivia, the situation is worse than we thought. I've been digging into William Sterling's finances and connections. He's more dangerous than I realized. He's been using his wealth and power to cover up some very dark activities. The attack on your home was just the beginning. He wants to eliminate any loose ends, and that includes you and Lily." Olivia's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, dark activities? What has he been hiding?" "There's a reason William Sterling is so desperate to get Lily back," Mark continued, his voice tense. "She's not just his granddaughter. She's the key to something much bigger. William has been involved in illegal dealings for years, and he's used his family connections to stay untouchable. But Lily's existence, her very bloodline, could expose everything. If anyone found out the truth, it could bring down his entire empire." Olivia's mind raced as she tried to piece together what Mark was saying. "So, Lily is in even more danger than we thought. What can we do?" "First, we need to gather as much evidence as possible against William," Mark said. "The more we have, the better our chances of protecting you both legally. But we also need to be prepared for the worst. William won't stop until he gets what he wants, and right now, that means silencing you and taking Lily. A sense of dread settled over Olivia. She had always known that William Sterling was ruthless, but the reality of what they were up against was far worse than she had imagined. She wasn't just fighting for Lily's safety, she was fighting for their very lives. "I'll start gathering everything I have," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "But Mark, if it comes down to it, if we can't stop him, I need to know that Lily will be safe. Can you promise me that?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Olivia could almost hear the weight of Mark's thoughts. "I'll do everything in my power to protect her, Olivia, but you have to be ready for anything. If it comes down to it, you might need to disappear completely." The thought of leaving everything behind, of vanishing into the shadows with Lily, was terrifying. But Olivia knew it might be the only way to keep her safe. "I understand," she said quietly. "Just tell me what I need to do." Over the next few days, Olivia worked tirelessly with Mark to gather the evidence they needed. She combed through her parents' old records, looking for anything that could link the Sterlings to their illicit activities. Mark continued to dig into William's financial dealings, uncovering a web of corruption that stretched far beyond anything they had anticipated. But as they worked, the tension grew. Olivia knew they were running out of time. Every day that passed brought them closer to the moment when William would make his next move. And then, late one night, the confrontation Olivia had been dreading finally arrived. She was in the study, reviewing the latest documents Mark had sent over, when she heard the sound of cars approaching. Her heart leaped into her throat as she peeked through the curtains, seeing the headlights cutting through the darkness. There were 3 black SUVs, the kind used by private security forces or worse. Olivia's first instinct was to grab Lily and run, but she knew it was too late. They had found her. There was no escape. She quickly called Mark, her voice shaking. "They're here, Mark. They found us." "Stay calm, Olivia," Mark said, though his voice was laced with urgency. "Do you have the documents? The evidence?" "Yes, I have everything," she replied, her hands trembling as she gathered the papers into a folder. "Good. Now listen to me. There's a safe room in the basement, behind the old wine cellar. Take Lily there and lock yourselves in. I'll get help, but you need to buy us some time." Olivia nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Okay, I'm going now." She ran to Lily's room, scooping the baby into her arms, and hurried downstairs to the basement. The sound of footsteps echoed through the house as the intruders made their way inside, searching for her. She found the hidden door behind the wine racks, just as Mark had described, and quickly slipped inside the safe room, closing the heavy metal door behind her. The room was small and dark, with only a dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling. There was a cot in the corner, a few supplies, and a communication panel that allowed her to hear what was happening outside. Olivia held Lily close, trying to steady her breathing as she listened to the voices outside the door. She could hear them moving through the house, their footsteps heavy and purposeful. "Search the whole place," a cold, commanding voice said. "She's here somewhere." Olivia's heart raced as she recognized the voice. William Sterling himself. He had come for her, just as Mark had warned. She held Lily tighter, the baby's soft breath against her neck the only thing keeping her grounded. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity, as Olivia waited in the darkness. She could hear the intruders ransacking the house, searching for her, but they hadn't found the safe room yet. She prayed they wouldn't, that Mark would get there in time. But then, the doorknob rattled, and Olivia's blood ran cold. "They found us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. There was a loud bang as someone tried to force the door open, followed by muffled voices. Olivia's mind raced, trying to think of what to do, but there was no way out. She was trapped. "Olivia Carter," William's voice called from outside. "I know you're in there. Open the door, and no harm will come to the child." His words sent a chill through her. She knew better than to believe him. William Sterling was a man without mercy, and if she opened that door, she knew they would both be lost. But as the door shook under the force of the intruders, Olivia knew she had no choice. She couldn't let them break in and take Lily by force. She had to face them, to buy time for Mark to arrive with help. Taking a deep breath, Olivia whispered to Lily, "I love you, my sweet girl. No matter what happens, I will protect you." She placed Lily on the cot, wrapping her in a blanket, and then turned to face the door. Her hands trembled as she reached for the latch, but her resolve was strong. She would not let William Sterling win. With one final breath, Olivia unlocked the door and opened it, stepping out into the dim light of the basement corridor. William Sterling stood there, flanked by two large men dressed in black. His cold eyes fixed on Olivia, a twisted smile curling on his lips. "You've made this difficult, Olivia," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But it's over now. Give me the child, and I might let you live." Olivia met his gaze, her fear replaced by a steely determination. "You'll never have her, William. I'll die before I let you take her." William's smile faltered, replaced by a sneer of anger. "So be it," he hissed, signaling to his men. But before they could move, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder as they approached the estate. William's expression twisted in fury as he realized his time was up. "You think you've won, but this isn't over," he spat, backing away. "You'll regret crossing me, Olivia Carter." As the sirens grew closer, William and his men retreated, disappearing into the shadows just as Mark arrived with the police. Olivia fell to her knees, the adrenaline finally crashing down on her. She had survived, but at what cost? Mark rushed to her side, helping her to her feet. "It's over, Olivia. You're safe now." But as she looked at the empty doorway where William had stood, Olivia knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The battle with the Sterlings had only just begun, and she would need all her strength to see it through. In the days following the confrontation at the estate, Olivia Carter found herself grappling with a mix of exhaustion and determination. The adrenaline from the night of the attack had faded, leaving her drained, but she knew there was no time to rest. William Sterling's retreat had been temporary. He would be back, and next time, he would be even more dangerous. The estate, which had once felt like a safe haven, now seemed like a prison. Olivia knew they couldn't stay there forever. She needed to regroup, to find a way to protect Lily that didn't involve constantly running. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help, and she knew exactly where to start. The next morning, Olivia contacted Evelyn Moore, her sharp-witted attorney, and arranged a meeting at a discreet location. They couldn't risk being seen together in public. William Sterling's reach extended far, and they had to be careful. They met in a small, out-of-the-way cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Evelyn arrived on time, her expression serious as she slid into the booth across from Olivia. "You look exhausted," she said, her voice softening with concern. "You need to take care of yourself, Olivia. This fight isn't over." Olivia nodded, but her mind was already focused on the task at hand. "I know, but I can't afford to rest. We need to come up with a plan to protect Lily, and I've been thinking, we can't win this alone. We need allies. People who have the resources and the power to stand up to William." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly do you have in mind?" "Most people are too scared to cross the Sterlings." Olivia hesitated before answering. She had thought long and hard about this decision, knowing it was risky, but there was no other option. "The Ashfords," she said finally. "They're the only ones who can match the Sterlings in power and influence." Evelyn's eyes widened in surprise. "The Ashfords? You mean your mother's family?" "But Olivia, the Ashfords have been at odds with the Sterlings for decades. Are you sure they'll even consider helping you?" Olivia took a deep breath. "It's a long shot, but they have as much to lose as I do. If William Sterling succeeds in whatever he's planning, it could bring down both families. The Ashfords might not want to ally with me, but they won't want to see the Sterlings win either." Evelyn leaned back in her seat, considering Olivia's words. "It's a dangerous move, but you're right. The Ashfords have the resources and the connections we need. If you can convince them to help, it could tip the scales in our favor." "But how do you plan to approach them?" Evelyn asked, her tone cautious. "You don't have much of a relationship with them, and they might see this as an opportunity to settle old scores." Olivia looked out the window, watching the rain patter against the glass. She had thought about this as well. The Ashfords were an enigmatic family, known for their wealth and power, but also for their secrecy. Her mother had distanced herself from them years ago, and Olivia had grown up without any real connection to them. But now, that estrangement might be her only hope. There's one person who might be willing to listen, Olivia said, turning back to Evelyn. My mother's cousin, Victoria Ashford. She was close to my mother before the family rift, and from what I've heard, she's still involved in the family's affairs. If anyone can be convinced to help, it's her. Evelyn nodded slowly. Victoria Ashford is a formidable woman, known for her shrewdness and influence. If you can get her on your side, the rest of the Ashfords might follow. But you'll need to be careful, Olivia. The Ashfords are not known for their loyalty to outsiders, even family. Olivia understood the risks, but she had no choice. She had to take the chance, for Lily's sake. I'll reach out to Victoria, she said resolutely, but we need to keep this quiet. If William finds out I'm trying to align with the Ashfords, he could retaliate before we're ready. Evelyn agreed, and they spent the next hour discussing their strategy. It was a delicate balance, moving forward without drawing attention, gathering allies without revealing too much. But as they talked, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't alone in this fight, and with Evelyn's guidance, she had a path forward. That evening, back at the estate, Olivia made the call. Her heart pounded as she dialed the number, a direct line to Victoria Ashford's private residence. She had rehearsed what she would say, but when Victoria answered, her voice cool and detached, Olivia's carefully planned words faltered. Victoria, it's Olivia Carter, she began, trying to steady her voice. I need to speak with you. It's about the Sterlings and Lily. There was a pause on the other end, and for a moment, Olivia feared that Victoria would hang up. But then she heard a sigh, followed by Victoria's voice, tinged with curiosity. Olivia, it's been a long time. I wondered when you might finally reach out. Come to the house tomorrow at noon. We'll talk then. The line went dead before Olivia could respond. She sat there for a moment, the phone still pressed to her ear, trying to calm the nerves that had begun to coil in her stomach. Victoria had agreed to meet, but there was no guarantee that she would help. Olivia knew she would have to tread carefully. One wrong move could ruin everything. The next day, Olivia drove to the Ashford estate, a sprawling property on the outskirts of London, surrounded by high walls and lush gardens. The house itself was an imposing structure with tall windows and ivy-covered stone, exuding a sense of both grandeur and isolation. As she walked up the steps to the front door, Olivia felt a pang of anxiety. This was enemy territory in a way. The Ashfords might share her blood, but they were as much a mystery to her as the Sterlings. She had no idea what to expect from this meeting. A butler answered the door and led her through the grand hallways to a sitting room where Victoria Ashford was waiting. Victoria was an elegant woman in her late 50s, with sharp features and an air of quiet authority. She stood as Olivia entered, her eyes appraising her with a mix of curiosity and caution. Olivia, Victoria said, her voice smooth and controlled. It's been a long time. I must admit, I'm surprised you reached out to me. Our families haven't exactly been close. Olivia nodded, forcing a smile. I know, and I appreciate you agreeing to meet with me on such short notice. I wouldn't have come if it weren't important. Victoria gestured for Olivia to sit, taking a seat herself across from her. You mentioned the Sterlings. What's going on, Olivia? And who is this child you spoke of? Olivia took a deep breath and began to explain. She told Victoria everything. Finding Lily, discovering her connection to the Sterlings, and the relentless pursuit by William Sterling to take the child. She spoke of the attack on the estate, the evidence they had gathered, and the danger they were now facing. Throughout the conversation, Victoria remained silent, her expression unreadable. When Olivia finished, there was a long pause as Victoria seemed to weigh her words carefully. I see, Victoria finally said, her tone thoughtful. William Sterling has always been a dangerous man. It doesn't surprise me that he would go to such lengths to protect his secrets. But you're asking me to involve the Ashfords in a battle that has been raging for decades. Why should we take that risk? Olivia met Victoria's gaze, her determination clear. Because this isn't just about me or Lily. If William succeeds, it could bring down both our families. I'm not asking for charity, Victoria. I'm asking for an alliance, one that benefits both of us. We can expose William's crimes, end his influence, and protect the Ashford legacy. But I can't do it alone. Victoria studied Olivia for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. You've grown into a formidable woman, Olivia. Your mother would be proud. But forming an alliance with the Ashfords is not a decision I can make lightly. There will be consequences, and not everyone in the family will agree. Olivia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I know it's a lot to ask, but I believe we can end this feud once and for all. Lily deserves to grow up free from the shadows of our past, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Victoria leaned back in her chair, a faint smile playing on her lips. You have spirit, Olivia. Perhaps you're right. This could be an opportunity to finally put the past to rest. I'll speak with the others, but I can't promise they'll agree. The Ashfords are not known for their unity. Thank you, Victoria, Olivia said, feeling a glimmer of hope. That's all I'm asking for, a chance. Victoria stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I'll be in touch, Olivia. In the meantime, be careful. William Sterling is not a man to be underestimated, and neither are the Ashfords. As Olivia left the estate, she felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The meeting had gone as well as she could have hoped, but there were no guarantees. The Ashfords were a powerful family, but they were also unpredictable. If they chose to side with her, it could change everything. If they didn't, she would be on her own. Driving back to the estate, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that the wheels of fate were turning and that the next few days would determine the outcome of this deadly game. She had taken the first step toward forming an alliance, but the battle was far from over. As she pulled into the driveway, the sun setting behind the hills, Olivia knew she had to stay strong. For Lily, for her family's legacy, and for the future they both deserved, she would face whatever came next. The days that followed Olivia Carter's meeting with Victoria Ashford were filled with anxious waiting. The uncertainty gnawed at her, the weight of what was at stake pressing down on her with every passing hour. She knew that Victoria was her best chance at securing an alliance strong enough to stand against William Sterling, but whether the Ashfords would support her remained unknown. Olivia kept busy, working with Mark Davenport to finalize the evidence they had gathered against William. They compiled a damning dossier of financial records, witness statements, and photographs, proof of the illegal dealings, bribes, and threats that William had used to build his empire. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that William Sterling was far more dangerous than they had initially realized. But as the evidence mounted, so did the risks. Olivia knew that if William got wind of their investigation, he would strike with everything he had. The attack on the estate had been a warning, and she had no illusions that he would hesitate to escalate further if he felt cornered. Then, one afternoon, as Olivia was reviewing the latest documents in the study, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, half expecting another threat from William. But instead, it was a brief, cryptic note. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. The Ashford Estate. Be prepared. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Victoria had made her decision. The next day, Olivia drove to the Ashford Estate with a sense of both hope and dread. She had spent the morning with Lily, cherishing every moment, knowing that whatever happened today would shape their future. As she approached the estate, its imposing gates looming ahead, she steeled herself for what was to come. Victoria met her in the grand foyer, her expression inscrutable as always. Without a word, she led Olivia through the winding corridors of the house to a large, formal sitting room where several members of the Ashford family were gathered. The room was filled with an air of anticipation, the kind that precedes a momentous decision. As Olivia entered, all eyes turned to her. She recognized a few faces from old family photos, distant relatives she had never met, but whose names she knew. There was Charles Ashford, Victoria's brother, a stern man with a reputation for being fiercely protective of the family's interests. Beside him sat his wife, Margaret, her sharp eyes missing nothing. There were others, too, cousins, uncles, all of them with the same intense focus on Olivia. Victoria gestured for Olivia to sit, then took her place at the head of the room. Olivia, thank you for coming. We've all heard about the situation with William Sterling and the danger he poses to you and Lily. We've discussed the matter at length, and now it's time to make a decision. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she met Victoria's gaze. I appreciate you considering my request. I know our families have a complicated history, but I believe we have a common enemy in William. If we work together, we can put an end to his influence and protect our families." There was a murmur of agreement from some of the Ashfords, but Charles leaned forward, his expression hard. "You're asking us to risk a lot, Olivia. The Sterling-Ashford feud has cost us dearly over the years. Aligning with you means reigniting that conflict. What guarantee do we have that this won't backfire?" Olivia took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. "I can't offer guarantees, Charles, but I can offer something more valuable: the truth. William Sterling has built his empire on lies and corruption, and we have the evidence to bring him down. If we stand together, we can not only protect our families, but also end the cycle of violence and revenge that has plagued us for generations." Charles frowned, his skepticism clear, but Victoria raised a hand, silencing him. "Olivia, you've shown great courage in coming to us. We've reviewed the evidence you provided, and it's compelling. But this isn't just about bringing down William, it's about what comes after. The Ashfords have always been cautious about involving ourselves in public scandals. If we go forward with this, it will expose us all." Olivia nodded, understanding the gravity of what she was asking. "I know it's a risk, but I believe it's worth taking. For Lily's sake, and for the future of both our families. If we don't act now, William will continue to operate with impunity. He won't stop until he's destroyed everything that stands in his way, including us." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of Olivia's words hanging in the air. Then Victoria spoke, her voice firm and clear. "I've made my decision. The Ashfords will stand with Olivia. We will use our resources to expose William Sterling's crimes and protect Olivia and Lily from any further harm." Olivia felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The fight against William was about to escalate, and the Ashfords' involvement would undoubtedly provoke a response. But before she could express her gratitude, Charles spoke up again, his tone cautious. "If we're going to do this, we need to be strategic. William won't go down easily, and he has allies in powerful places. We'll need to ensure that when the truth comes out, it's undeniable. We'll also need to protect ourselves from the fallout. This could get very messy very quickly." Victoria nodded in agreement. "Charles is right. We'll need to coordinate our efforts carefully. Olivia, I want you to work closely with our legal team and Mark Davenport. We'll also need to reach out to certain contacts in the media who can help us control the narrative. We'll expose William, but on our terms." As the discussion continued, Olivia realized just how high the stakes had become. This was no longer just about protecting Lily. It was about dismantling a powerful man's empire and confronting the legacy of a feud that had shaped her family's history. But with the Ashford support, she felt a renewed sense of hope. After the meeting, Victoria pulled Olivia aside, her expression softer than before. "You've done well, Olivia. This is a difficult path you've chosen, but you're not alone. The Ashfords will stand by you." "Thank you, Victoria," Olivia said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I couldn't do this without your help." Victoria smiled faintly, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Remember, Olivia, this alliance is a means to an end. Once William is dealt with, you'll need to decide what kind of future you want for Lily and for yourself. Don't let the past consume you." Olivia nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. The Ashfords might be her allies now, but they were still a family with their own interests, their own secrets. She would need to navigate these alliances carefully, ensuring that Lily's future remained her top priority. As she left the Ashford estate, Olivia felt a mixture of emotions: relief, determination, and a lingering unease. The battle against William Sterling was about to reach its climax, and while she now had powerful allies, the outcome was still far from certain. Back at the estate, Olivia sat with Lily, watching her sleep peacefully in her crib. The innocence on Lily's face was a stark contrast to the turmoil that surrounded them, and Olivia's resolve hardened. She would see this through, no matter the cost. The truth would come out, and with it, the chance for a new beginning. But as she prepared for the fight ahead, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, some crucial piece of the puzzle that had yet to reveal itself. She had the Ashfords on her side, but William was still out there, and he was undoubtedly planning his next move. The truth was a powerful weapon, but it could also be a double-edged sword. And as the clock ticked down to the final confrontation, Olivia knew that the real challenge would be surviving long enough to wield it. The final showdown between Olivia Carter and William Sterling was inevitable. The storm clouds that had been gathering for weeks finally broke, and the battle lines were drawn. With the Ashfords by her side and the damning evidence against William Sterling ready to be unveiled, Olivia knew that everything she had fought for, every sacrifice she had made, had led to this moment. The plan was simple, yet fraught with risk. Olivia, Victoria Ashford, and their legal team would present the evidence to law enforcement and key figures in the media simultaneously, ensuring that William's crimes would be exposed to the public before he had a chance to retaliate. The Ashfords' influence would protect them from immediate backlash, but they all knew that William wouldn't go down without a fight. The morning of the confrontation, Olivia sat alone in the estate's study, gathering her thoughts. Lily was safe, cared for by one of the Ashford family's trusted nannies, and for the first time in weeks, Olivia felt a sense of calm. She had done everything she could to protect Lily, and now it was time to face the man who had cast such a long shadow over her life. Just as the clock struck 10, the first calls went out. Olivia, Victoria, and Charles Ashford stood side by side as they contacted law enforcement, delivering the evidence they had gathered. At the same time, their contacts in the media were briefed, ensuring that the story would break wide open, leaving William Sterling no room to maneuver. For a few tense hours, they waited, monitoring the news reports and the responses from the authorities. Then, just before noon, the first headline flashed across the screen: Billionaire William Sterling accused of decades-long corruption and criminal activity. Evidence unveiled by Ashford family and Olivia Carter. The impact was immediate. The story spread like wildfire, dominating every news outlet and social media platform. As the full scope of William's crimes became clear, bribery, extortion, money laundering, and worse, the public outcry grew. Politicians who had once been in William's pocket scrambled to distance themselves, and the legal system moved quickly to issue warrants for his arrest. But William Sterling was not a man to be cornered so easily. Just as Olivia began to believe they had won, the news broke that William had gone into hiding, his vast network of contacts and resources allowing him to slip away before the authorities could apprehend him. The relief that had begun to build in Olivia's heart was replaced by a cold dread. William was still out there, a wounded animal more dangerous than ever. And she knew that as long as he was free, neither she nor Lily would be truly safe. That evening, as Olivia sat in the study, her phone rang. The number was blocked, but she answered it anyway, her heart pounding. "Olivia," a familiar voice hissed through the line. It was William Sterling. "You think you've won, but you haven't. This isn't over. I'll find you, and when I do, you'll regret ever crossing me." Olivia's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to stay calm. "You're finished, William. The world knows what you are. There's nowhere left for you to hide." A bitter laugh echoed on the other end of the line. "You've made a powerful enemy, Olivia. You and that child of yours. Watch your back." The line went dead, leaving Olivia shaken but resolute. William's threat was real, but she refused to let fear control her. She had come too far, fought too hard, to back down now. That night, Olivia met with Victoria and the rest of the Ashfords to discuss their next move. They all knew that William's escape was a dangerous development, but they also knew that the tide had turned against him. The world was watching, and his days of operating in the shadows were numbered. "We'll keep the pressure on," Victoria said, her voice steady and commanding. "William can't hide forever. We have allies in the government, and with the evidence we've provided, they'll track him down eventually. But until then, we need to be vigilant." Charles nodded in agreement. "We've put security measures in place at all of our properties. Olivia, you and Lily will stay here, under our protection, until it's safe." Olivia agreed, grateful for their support, but also knowing that she couldn't rely on the Ashfords forever. She had to think about the future, about what life would look like once this nightmare was over. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and media attention. The authorities intensified their search for William, and every day brought new developments. But as time passed and William remained at large, Olivia began to feel the strain. She couldn't live in a state of constant vigilance, not with Lily depending on her. It was during one of these restless nights that Olivia made a decision. She realized that to truly protect Lily, she needed to step away from the life she had known. The Ashfords had done everything they could to help her, but their world was one of power and politics, and Olivia knew that she and Lily needed something different: peace, stability, and the chance to start over. One morning, she called Mark Davenport to the estate. "Mark, I've made up my mind," she said as they sat in the study. "Once William is caught, I'm leaving London. I want to give Lily the life she deserves, far away from all of this." Mark looked at her, understanding in his eyes. "I figured you might come to that decision. You've been through a lot, Olivia. But are you sure you want to leave everything behind?" Olivia nodded. "Yes, I am. I want Lily to grow up without fear, without the burden of the past hanging over her. And I need a fresh start too. This battle with William has shown me what really matters." Mark reached across the table, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We'll make sure that William is brought to justice, and then you can start that new life." The weeks that followed were a test of Olivia's resolve. The search for William Sterling continued, and with each passing day, the world waited for the final chapter in his story. But Olivia remained focused on her plan. She began making arrangements, quietly selling off her assets and preparing to leave London. And then, one crisp autumn morning, the news broke. William Sterling had been captured in a remote location in South America. He had been living under an alias, but his luck had finally run out. The authorities had tracked him down, and now he was in custody, facing charges that would likely keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. The relief that washed over Olivia was overwhelming. It was finally over. William Sterling, the man who had threatened her, who had cast a dark shadow over her life, was gone. That evening, Olivia gathered the Ashfords and her closest allies for a small celebration. There was no grand party, no media fanfare, just a quiet gathering of those who had stood by her through the ordeal. Victoria raised a glass, her eyes reflecting the satisfaction of a hard-won victory. To Olivia, for her courage and determination. "You've shown us all what it means to fight for what's right." And to Lily, for whom we've all fought so hard. "May her future be bright and free from the shadows of the past." Olivia smiled, holding Lily close as she looked around the room at the faces of those who had become her family in this battle. The Ashfords, Mark, and even Evelyn. They had all played a part in this victory, and Olivia knew she would be forever grateful. But as the evening wore on, Olivia slipped away from the celebration, needing a moment to herself. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air filling her lungs as she looked out over the city she had called home for so long. There was a sense of finality in the air, but also the promise of a new beginning. Olivia knew that the fight had changed her, had made her stronger, but it had also made her realize what was truly important. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke over London, Olivia packed up the last of her belongings. She had already arranged for a small house in a quiet village by the sea, a place where she and Lily could start over. Victoria met her at the door, a rare softness in her expression. "Are you sure about this, Olivia? You're always welcome here, you know?" Olivia smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I'm sure, Victoria. Thank you for everything. But it's time for me to build a new life, one that's just for Lily and me." With that, Olivia and Lily left the Ashford estate, heading towards their new future. As they drove away, Olivia felt a sense of liberation she hadn't known was possible. The past was behind her, and for the first time, the future was hers to shape. They arrived at the small coastal village just as the sun was setting, the sky painted in hues of pink and orange. Olivia breathed in the salty air, feeling a sense of calm she had longed for. The house she had chosen was modest but welcoming, with a garden for Lily to play in and a view of the sea that stretched out to the horizon. As she settled Lily into her new home, Olivia felt a deep contentment. This was where they were meant to be, away from the chaos and danger, in a place where they could build a life filled with love and peace. That night, as Olivia watched Lily sleep, she knew that the journey had been worth it. She had faced her fears, confronted her past, and emerged stronger for it. And now, she was ready for whatever the future held. Olivia lay down, the sound of the waves lulling her to sleep, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she dreamed not of the past, but of the bright and hopeful days to come. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story about overcoming challenges and family love, don't forget to like the video, comment on what touched you the most, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for our next exciting story.